One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours.
I look at all the times that my mother was turned away, my daughters were told no, and my son was told, you just won't make it. Black Lives Matter. And then I look at the lives of Breonna Taylor, Eric Garner, George Floyd, who received a death sentence for doing nothing but being black. But without whose deaths we would not be talking about civil rights and social justice for black people today and for all people in this country and throughout the world. Black Lives Matter.
The movement is a rhythm to us.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
It's important to recognize the significance of this moment as history in the making.
There's ongoing disproportionate use of force by law enforcement against people of color for far too long in this country.
The unarmed black behavioral therapist shot by police.
I deserve not to be afraid if a police officer chooses to pull me over. I deserve not to be shot, choked, or beaten by the police or their wannabe militia.
We are fighting systemic racism in our country.
Breaking news in the fatal shooting of 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery, an unarmed black man who was out for a job.
It was JFK, I believe, that said the rights of all are diminished when the rights of one are threatened. And I can't think of a more socially relevant situation than we're seeing right now.
The movement for civil rights did not end in the 1960s. Anytime there's a group of oppressed people anywhere in the world, the movement for civil rights must continue. These protests in 2020 are vitally important because every single American must be shown that racism is still alive and well in this country. It doesn't have to be in the form of a burning cross on somebody's yard. That racism is indeed systemic and embedded in the American system. That these protests show that we must be heard, that we must be seen, and that we deserve to be respected.
These are people's mothers, fathers, daughters, sons that are being hurt by law enforcement, and these injustices can no longer be accepted, and we must work to change.
And change is far overdue. We are on a fierce mission to eradicate white supremacy and end racism. If we are ever going to live up to the founding principles that all men are created equal, we must join together and support the Black Lives Matter movement. Because for far too long, Black lives and people of color have been oppressed. No more. We demand justice.
It's important that we all do our part to ensure that this movement keeps its momentum until liberation is seen and justice is served.
It's our responsibility to come together in a time of need, to have the difficult conversations, to ask the difficult questions, to listen, to learn, and most importantly, to understand.
Those of us that are non-Black need to do our part by learning the true history that has led us to this place and has upheld the disenfranchisement of Black people in our nation. For those of us that call ourselves allies, to really put in the work and take that seriously. And that means listening to the critiques that the Black community has for us without defense, and using that as a tool to root out racism as it exists within ourselves, within our friend group, within our cultures, within our communities.
The most hope for our future comes with our ability to vote. Our current system is obviously not working for everyone, so let's change it so that way it does. Voting within our small communities is the best way we can ensure that our own voices are being heard, and voting in our national election is the best way we can ensure that the voices of our brothers and sisters that have been silenced for so long are also heard.
I cannot stand to be living with these injustices. That is why we must continue to protest and continue to make our voices heard. We must continue to support Black Lives Matter. That is why we must get out and vote. We must vote for those candidates that will address these injustices, and we must vote in order to make this country a better place for Black Americans.
Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Black lives
in history. No one can win a war individually. It takes the wisdom of the elders and young people's energy. Welcome to the story we call victory, the coming of the Lord. My eyes have seen the glory.
The Black Lives Matter movement, to me, signals a reinvigoration of American spirit, a decision en masse for people to finally get back to having a conscience about how, and caring about how they interact with each other. It's what we saw in the 60s with the Civil Rights Movement. It's what we saw with suffrage. The Black Lives Matter movement is a very important step towards actually making America as great as it claims to be. Actually living up to the aspirations and the dreams and the notions that we all say that this country embodies. The Black Lives Matter movement is very important.